My name is Alice Rodriguez, and I'd like to welcome you to the question and answer session for the request for qualifications for design services for track and overhead contact systems. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and review the agenda. Today's presentation is a little bit different than the ones that we've done in the past. Today is a question and answer session. We will have some review of some slides. So I will also go through just a high level high-speed rail slides that I'll get through, and then Bruce Armistead, our Chief of Rail and Operations Delivery, will talk more about the procurement. And then our small business advocate, Chardonnay Valley, will provide a small business program overview. Then we will follow that up with a organizational conflicts of interest overview by Kate Cook, one of our attorneys here. And then we're going to open it up to a question and answer session where you will be able to use the Q&A feature to ask us questions. So we'll get to that in a little bit. Let me go ahead and ask for the next slide. Before we do get started, I do want to tell you there's a number of online resources for you to take advantage of to find more information besides what's offered here today. We did have a Track and Systems Industry Awareness Day event in November, on the 15th of November. There was a question and answer session there as well, and that was regarding a larger, broader audience, topics of procurements that the authority is looking to move forward. So if you scan that QR code, there on that site, you'll find the registration list, the Industry Awareness Day presentation, so the PowerPoint, and a video, and all of the questions and the responses to those questions. So again, a valuable resource. And if you scan that QR code, you can go directly to that site. If you don't use the QR code and you just want to get there by using our homepage, you can go to hsr.ca.gov, select business opportunities, and then select contract opportunities, and then you'll see track and systems as the topic there. All right, next slide. Okay, so some process details for the procurement. All of our procurements do have web pages. This is another QR code. This one will link you directly to the information for the design services for track and overhead contact systems procurement we're talking about today. Again, same path as before. It's pretty straightforward. You go to our homepage, hsr.ca.gov, select business opportunities, then design services for track and overhead contact systems. You'll see that there. Okay, and on that webpage, you will find video from today's Q&A session. We might need a day or two to get that video posted, but you'll also see that we did offer a virtual pre-bid on that day, and that video will be there as well, along with the PowerPoint presentations from today and from the November 15th pre-bid, and the complete list of the registrants is that. You can submit procurement questions if you don't want to ask them here today, or if you think of something after today's presentation. Feel free to email trackdesign@hsr.ca.gov, and those questions are due by February 9th. So make sure you get those in. Again, that email, trackdesign@hsr.ca.gov. All right, next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just do a very brief overview. On those two resource pages that I went through, you will find broader program overviews there, but in light of today's different format with a Q&A and ability to ask questions, we thought we would minimize that. So let me go ahead and go through my two slides that are just really brief, just to give anybody who's new to the project a very high level overview. Next slide, please. Okay, so what we're building, if you take a look there on the map on the right, you'll see that dark blue line. That is 900 miles would be a little bit much. 494 miles from San Francisco to Los Angeles and down into Anaheim. That is what we call phase one. And that will connect downtown San Francisco to downtown Los Angeles and all the way again down into Anaheim. Phase two is that yellow dotted line there that you see that extends the system north to Sacramento and south to San Diego. The train will be able to travel at speeds approximately 220 miles per hour, and we'll have up to 24 stations. Okay, next slide, please. Where we are today, a little bit of the progress. I'm going to start with that light or yellow line there in the middle of the map. That is 119 miles that are under active construction from Madera to about Poplar Avenue in the Central Valley. 52 miles in that light blue are under advanced design. That's going to take us north into Merced and then south down into Bakersfield. And that will create the 171, what we call initial operating segment for high-speed rail, the Merced to Bakersfield run. So those light blue sections are under advanced design. We are working on environmentally clearing the full 500 or 494 miles, but we have now 422 miles already cleared to date, which is exciting. And we are working on finalizing the other two in the next year or two. We do have some bookend projects happening while all the other work is happening in the Central Valley. That's the Caltrain electrification project. And that's kind of that peachy, kind of light pink color up at the top from San Francisco to San Jose. We are a funding partner with Caltrain to electrify that portion where the high-speed rail will share the corridor there on the Caltrain. Los Angeles Union Station is improving their system to go from stub end tracks to pass-through, and we are a funding partner there as well. And then we do have some grade separation projects in both Southern California and in Northern California that we are funding partners on as well. Again, preparing the alignment for high-speed rail. We do have 4 stations in the Central Valley that are under under design. That's Merced, the Fresno, the Kings Tulare, and the Bakersfield stations. They're in the central part of California. And we also do have a memorandum of understanding with Brightline West. You know, a lot of folks often ask us about the other high-speed rail project, which is exciting. And that's happening in Southern California. And we do have an MOU with them for interoperability. Other than that, I think I am done. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. I think I'm going to turn it over to Bruce. I am. Bruce, take it away.
All right, very good. My name is Bruce Armstead. I'm the Chief of Rail and Operations Delivery here at the Authority. And I'm going to chat through the details of the procurement that we're discussing today. Next slide, please. Okay, the Authority has issued an RFQ to receive statements of qualifications from the offerers for the track and overhead contact system design services. The purposes of this RFQ is to award an agreement to a successful offerer to design the track and the overhead contact system elements that cover the entire guideway from Merced to Bakersfield. This is a professional services contract and is critical for achieving certification from the FRA. Next slide, please. Package 1, which is the Track and OCS design, along with the Package 1B, which would be the construction manager, general contractor contract for construction of the track civil works, track bed, the track itself, and the OCS. Our Package 2 is the systems package, which is under further refinement. Package 3 are the train sets, which are out now, and we have issued a shortlist, and we'll be releasing that RFP shortly. Depots and facilities and the other additional support contracts are under development. Next slide, please. Draft contract terms. The term will be 6 years, 8 months. The total value of the $131.2 million, and with the extensions, it could be up to $161. This is a qualification-based procurement. Fair and reasonable fees and costs will be negotiated with the top-ranked offerer to be executing a contract. And prior to executing a contract, we will be negotiating fees with the top-ranked offerer. This contract is intended to comply with the current small business program requirements. Next slide, please. The scope of work, high-level design for the OCS elements and the track elements that cover the entire system. We're designing a system similar to an electrical system in a house. We design the entire system, and then we go into detailed design for each room in the house, so to say. The 171-mile guideway is from Merced to Bakersfield, and then we'll have detailed designs for the Madera to Poplar Avenue segment, which is also intended to be our test track. The design of the track system will include the subballast layer, OCS, along with the track cable containment, any cross-track ducts, access ways, fencing, and drainage, and that's the track drainage. Manage the technical and non-technical interfaces with the contractors and consultants, and we will ask that this designer work collaboratively with the interfacing contractors, including the CMGC, and selected to construct a track and OCS under this contract. Next slide, please. Scope of work. And we've broken this contract up into NTPs. NTP1 will be a host of initial deliverables, a high-level design of the system to confirm that it all works together and can be modeled from a traction power perspective properly. High-level design for the entire early operating segment from Merced to Bakersfield, and then detailed design for the first construction segment, which is the area in which civil works are currently underway. We hope to get started in earnest on construction when the civil areas are available for us to start installing the track and system elements. NTP2 would be the Merced to Madera piece, and NTP3 would be what we call the locally generated alternative. This is an alternative that was locally generated, obviously, and that goes from Poplar to Bakersfield. Now, these NTPs will be overlapping, so they won't be sequential, they'll be concurrent. Next slide, please. This is a more zoomed in detail of the previous slide that shows how the NTPs relate to the entire high-speed rail system. As you can see there, the San Francisco to Merced and then on down to Bakersfield are all one system, and we will be putting together within this design just the Merced to Bakersfield portion. The 119-mile construction segment in green is currently underway, and the orange is intended to denote the 170-mile early operating segment. Next slide, please. Evaluation and performance. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Rachel to talk about the evaluation and performance and other procurement elements of this project.
All right, thanks, Bruce. My name is Rachel Wong. I am the procurement lead for this procurement and your point of contact. The statement of qualifications will be evaluated and scored based off of the criteria that's shown in the RFQ. The pre-award audit will be conducted concurrent with the negotiations prior to execution of the contract. The contract includes provisions for performance-based fee structure, and key performance indicators must be met in order to earn the fee. The performance-based fee range negotiated in the task order is limited to 8% to 11% based on the excellence of the performance and other factors. And all of that is written and negotiated into each task order. Next slide, please. All right, so there are two separate locations where you can find out more information and specifically a copy of the latest RFQ. The RFQ can be found on our California State Contract Register website, which is shown right there where it says Cali Procure, that first link. Updates to the website include any written questions and RFQ addenda, as well as reference materials that are also posted on this particular link. And then the second option to find more information about this procurement is to go directly to the authority's website. The website shown right there. If you select hsr.ca.gov, there's a top ribbon there. You can click on business opportunities, and on the far right-hand column, there's a list of the various web pages built for each procurement, and there will be one specific for this RFQ. From there, and this is kind of a repeat of information that Alice had shared previously, there are information from the previous pre-bid meeting, which includes presentation material, video, and registrants lists. And that registrants list has self-identified primes as well as small businesses listed on that list. If you have any questions, they can be submitted directly to trackdesign@hsr.ca.gov. From there, all of those questions and answers are posted on Cal eProcure, and the questions are anonymous, so it doesn't matter who is submitting those questions. Each question will have a written response that's posted on our California State Contract Register. Next slide, please. All right, this is our procurement schedule. As most of you know, we did advertise this contract following our November board meeting. The contract was advertised on November 3rd with a virtual pre-bid conference following on November 15th. We are conducting our current Q&A session currently on this contract, and the deadline to submit any questions will be February 9th, close of business. And the statement of qualifications are now due on April 4th, with an anticipated notice of proposed award on May 1st. Between May 1st and June, we'll be negotiating the contract as well as conducting a pre-award audit review. And then following that, we anticipate taking this item back to the June board for approval, followed by contract execution and issuance of NTP1 in late June of 2024. All right, with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Bruce. Next slide, please. My apologies, it goes back to small business. Chardonnay?
Thank you, Rachel. Good morning, everyone. I am Chardonnay Valley. I'm the Small Business Advocate, and I oversee the Small Business Program. My team will be your point of contact for your small business needs, and on the bottom of the slide, you will find my team's email, and it will be placed in the chat. Next slide, please. So we have a good number of businesses that are already performing on the contract, a total of 812 that come from all over the state. As you'll see on the map, it designates where they are essentially located. We also have 28 small businesses that are from outside of the state. In order to meet your goal and in accordance with the Small Business Disabled Veteran Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, or the SB DVBE program, as we refer to it, you will need to designate a small business officer that is responsible for being the point of contact for all things SB DVBE. This person will work closely with my team, and once the contract is executed, a small business officer is designated to my team, and my team will hold a kickoff to go over the small business requirements in more details. The small business team is dedicated to supporting your project success, whether you require hosting a workshop or generating interest for upcoming procurements or task orders within your contract. We are committed to working together to meet your objectives. Previously, the authority had a 30% overall goal, inclusive of 10% DBE and 3% DVBE. The authority's board of directors approved goal changes to the SB DVBE program, and all contracts executed after November 2nd, 2023 will have a new goal structure. Each contract goal will be expressed separately based on federal and state requirements. Next slide, please. So for blended contracts, which is currently how the majority of the authority's contracts are classified, they contain both state and federal dollars, including grants. We will continue to apply a 3% DVBE and a 10% DBE goal, which will be applied across the total contract value, and we will apply a 25% small business goal on the state portion of the contract. Of that 25%, we will carve out a 3% micro business goal, as outlined on this slide. Please note that this contract has blended funds and will therefore have this goal application. This slide here also shows examples of the SB DVBE DBE goals for contracts with 100% state or federal funds. For 100% state funded contracts, the authority will apply a 3% DVBE goal, a 25% small business goal using all categories that qualify under the state standard, which includes certified small businesses and SBPW. Of that 25%, we will designate 3% micro businesses. For 100% federal funded contracts, which includes any grant funds, the authority will apply a 17% DBE goal. Next slide, please. So the authority is committed to diversity, but we are not a certifying agency. We partner with a couple of different agencies to utilize their certification designations, as you see listed here on this slide. Anytime you want to bring a business on board, they have to be certified with these departments here, and their certification must be current and valid. You will want to make sure that throughout the time your small businesses are performing on a contract, that their certifications are continuously updated. Most of these certifications carry a 1 to 2 year term before they need to be renewed, but it is their responsibility to make sure that the certifications are current. The California Department of General Services offers the Small Business Certification, Micro Business Certification, and SBPW, which includes firms who specifically work on public works. The SBPW is beneficial for small firms that have graduated out of the DGS Small Business Program as a result of having worked on this project. The SBPW goes up to 38 million gross annual receipts, increasing every year by 1 million until it reached 40 million, and they can still qualify as a small business. DGS also offers the Disabled Veteran Business Enterprise, also known as the DVBE certification. The California Unified Certification Program, or CUCP, which is the Disadvantaged Enterprise Certification, offered by a consortium of agencies throughout California. Caltrans is the agency in Sacramento that offers the certification statewide. There are various agencies that offer the certification statewide, including the Bay Area Rapid Transit, or BART, and in Southern California, LA Metro. So businesses are able to choose the agency in their region. If you have any firms that are trying to join your team with this certification, please let them know it takes several months to get certified. Please keep in mind that anything federal will take longer to process, but these certifications listed here are the only certifications we accept, and they do have to be certified at the time they are brought onto the contract, during execution, and throughout the duration of the contract. Next slide, please. The authority does not prohibit subconsultants or subcontractors being exclusive to one offeror, but we do strongly discourage this practice. Next slide, please. And here on this slide, it covers our Connect HSR vendor registry. We encourage all businesses to register with Connect HSR. It's free, it's online, and simple to complete. Businesses who register will be notified of opportunities and workshops hosted by HSR and other agency partners, and can learn about how HSR does business. So we encourage businesses to join and register. If you need more information on getting registered, please reach out to me and I will put you in contact with someone from my team that can help you with the process. Thank you for your time today. If you do have any questions about the SB DVBE DBE program, please send us an email at sbprogram@hsr.ca.gov, and I will also drop that email address in the chat. Thank you. Next slide.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kate Cook. I'm an attorney here with the High Speed Rail Authority supporting this procurement, and I'm going to just go over a few short slides about organizational conflicts of interest and what you need to know for this procurement. And there's more information on that, a few more slides, and just like was alluded to earlier on the pre-recorded full pre-bid meeting that we did back in November. Just keep in mind that the procurement schedule from this presentation and the one that's now posted on the website are the current schedule dates that you need to be aware of. So really quickly, before I get into the organizational conflicts of interest policy, and after this, we will move on to the Q&A. I just wanted to remind everyone that This procurement is active. It's been active since the early November. And when we have an active procurement, it means that the rules of conduct are very strict in order to protect the integrity of the procurement, make sure everyone's getting the same access to equal information. So that means if you are a potential offerer, you need to only be communicating with Rachel Wong, the point of contact for this procurement, which her contact information is listed in 3.1 of the RFQ. The other opportunity to communicate with the authority on the procurement is through the legal@HSR email that I'm going to be showing up on a minute here in the slide about conflicts. Otherwise, you should not be having any communication with board members, with HSR staff. We need to make sure that all communication comes through Rachel or legal so that we know that everybody's getting the same information about the procurement. So next slide, please. So the authority, like most public agencies, we have an organizational conflicts of interest policy. We're required to have this under our federal grant agreements that we have with the FRA. The goal of this policy is to really protect these procurements and make sure that they're as transparent as possible and that we can have the most level playing field to encourage true competition. And it also makes sure we're complying with procurement laws, particularly federal ones, since we get quite a bit of federal money on this program. Next slide. So if you're new to this, at the authority, the way it works is if you are interested in participating in a procurement and you've looked at the policy, which you can find here at this link, or you can go to 3.7, that section of our in the RFQ to learn more about it. If you read that policy and you're concerned or you have questions, we encourage you to use the email that'll be on the next slide to ask those questions to the legal staff. You don't have to get a quote clearance letter. Sometimes smaller firms or new firms feel like that's a requirement. It's not a requirement to be pre-cleared, but if you do have any current work on the project or current work on a sister, I won't say sister, but adjacent project to us, like say Caltrain or the LA Union Station or something like that, it's probably a good idea to send an email to get your questions answered. Also, think about which other procurements your firm might be interested in. For example, the track design consultant, the prime designer for the track and OCS design, would most likely not be allowed to be the lead on the CMGC, because the CMGC contractor will kind of be working with and checking some of that work and have their own design folks who kind of do pre-construction checks and things like that. Similarly, construction management that's overseeing this contract and the CMGC, that needs to be an independent group. So every case, though, is very different based on the facts. So please send your questions if you have any. Next slide, please. This is the email address where you can send those requests for a determination under the organizational conflict of interest policy. We will then look at it, likely ask you for more information, and then our chief counsel reviews the analysis and maybe asks questions as well back to you to make sure we have all the information, and then we issue a determination. And at any time, if a firm that's requesting a determination to participate or participate with what we call mitigation, sometimes we say, yes, you can participate, but we're going to put a few rules around that to make sure everything stays fair. If at any time a requester is not happy with that determination, you can certainly contact our chief counsel to bring up additional information or ask questions. It's not uncommon for her to take meetings and work with all the firms to try to get everybody's questions answered. Okay, so I'm going to now move on to the Q&A stuff. If we could go to the next slide, please. Before we get to the Q&A, this is the information you need about this procurement. That's the QR code. You can snap a picture of that to get there. You can submit all of your questions on this. If we don't get to your question today on the Q&A, we have quite a bit of time left, but if we don't get to it, please resubmit it to trackdesign@hsr.ca.gov by February 9th, and we will answer it in that forum. That webpage will also have videos, PowerPoints, registration lists, an opportunity for you to register if you haven't already. And it'll have these slides in the coming days. These slides will be posted as well. Okay, so we're going to leave this slide up, I think, while we get to the Q&A. I'm going to MC the Q&A and then throw the questions to the appropriate person if I cannot answer them. There is a question about exclusivity. And since we just ended that small business area, I wanted to hit that one first. Is exclusivity encouraged or discouraged for small businesses? The wording on the slide seems like exclusivity is discouraged. That is correct. The authority does not have a policy saying that you have to be exclusive, that you can't be exclusive, but we generally discourage exclusivity, meaning we prefer that a prime group doesn't require its subs to be, quote, exclusive, because that could limit opportunities for small businesses. Okay, we've got some other questions. The first question I'm going to take is, this is likely for the rail group, for Bruce, our chief of rail, or possibly for Ryan, our director of rail engineering. This question says, why aren't you breaking this up into smaller contracts?
Okay, I'll let Ryan answer that question. Generally, you want to have one designer for the entire system, but if Ryan should be on the call and he can go into more detail about why that is. Ryan?
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. Basically, exactly as what Bruce has said, the way the packages, the longitudinal elements of this scope are packaged together because they're all interrelated. We believe there's the efficiency of designing these elements together. So track, drainage, OCS system. And also there's a big safety and logistics advantage, particularly later when we're looking at the construction piece. So also, again, when we get into the CMGC for the construction, trying to simplify that interface with one designer with that constructor rather than having multiple design contracts, that we believe is a more efficient and will result in a better solution for the overall system.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ryan. The next question is likely also for you, Ryan. What other contracts will be integrating with this contract?
So on a really simple level, everything else that the authority's doing. So the main ones being the train sets, obviously a major interface with both the OCS and the track. The traction power, train control and communications from a physical on-site perspective, because the systems have to interact at a number of sites along the 171 miles. And then at the extremities, we have the civil extensions on the Merced de Madeira and the LGA extension. There's obviously the physical connections, making sure the alignments work for that future build out as well.
Excellent. Okay, this next question I think is for Rachel Wong, the procurement lead. This question is, will you be conducting one-on-ones for this procurement, one-on-one meetings?
We will not be conducting one-on-one meetings. One-on-one meetings typically are not conducted after we release an RFQ, but please note that the authority is taking written questions that can be submitted to our trackdesign@hsr.ca.gov email address. And the questions are anonymous, and we publish all of the questions, including a response, on our California State Contract Register's website.
Great. That's my recollection too. Usually we just do the one-on-one meetings for the best value type procurements, the 2 steps. or RFPs, not RFQs, I believe. Okay, so the next question might go to Ryan and or Bruce again. How do you anticipate collaboration will work for all of these contracts, the track, the systems, the stations?
Yep, happy to take that one, Kate. Really what we're trying to do is build a best for program approach. So it's about having all the individual contractors working together in a very regular fashion. So we call them interdisciplinary design reviews. So the idea is we'll have a common data platform, so a BIM model for the entire route. And the idea is we will have all the individual parties, even though they're not contractually related, involved, so we can make the decisions which are for best for program throughout the life of the design and construction.
And I'd like to add that the concurrence of the designs is also very important, in that we don't want the track and OCS design to get too far ahead of the rolling stock design. And similarly with the signaling and train control, we don't want that to get too far ahead of those two designs either. So as the concurrency of the design is also important.
Totally agree, Bruce.
And I believe we're also going to be requiring all of these interfacing contractors, such as train sets, track and OCS, design, the CMGC, the future systems, to work together and come up with like a collaboration framework, a governance framework that everyone agrees to. Sometimes it's sort of a collaboration charter they sign on to. It's very common with these alternative delivery methods, so that everyone has some buy-in on how that collaboration is going to work, who's going to be meeting, how often, that kind of thing. Is that still the vision, Bruce, that they'll be coming up with that with our assistance?
Absolutely, that is the vision. And as Kate said, we want it to be collaborative, so we're not dictating as much as we are working with the contractors that we will be bringing on board. And again, that speaks directly to our concurrency of having these contracts active at the same time and then in roughly the same phase, so that we can get that collaboration document together.
Okay, so with that theme, I see one question. I'm going to go slightly out of order because I see one question that kind of relates to that. And the question is, will the extension of this procurement deadline impact the schedule of the CMGC tender of that? The CMGC, again, that's what the authority is going to be issuing a construction manager, general contractor delivery method. That procurement is going to be for the construction and installation of the track and OCS elements that are designed under this contract. I believe that chart we showed earlier, Bruce, showed the adjusted date. So it has pushed out a little bit, right, to Q3 of this year. So the answer to that question, I guess, is yes, it's impacted it slightly. We're just trying to make sure we get everything right before we release things. So that's looking in like Q3. Okay, and that's like you said, Bruce, we don't want this design to get too far ahead of that. We need all that collaboration to be happening.
Correct. Yep, you're absolutely right, Kate.
The next question is likely for Rachel. Where can we find more information on the timing of the other rail procurements, like the one I just mentioned?
There is quite a few resources and websites that you can find information. I think first and foremost, for upcoming rail contracts, you're going to want to follow our board meetings, agendas and materials that are posted. The agenda is typically up on the board website 10 days prior, and any materials associated with procurements are typically posted anywhere between 6 to 7 days prior to the board meeting. Additionally, we did do our industry day, as mentioned earlier, on November 15th. And if you go to our website, hsr.ca.gov, and then under business opportunities on the top banner there, once you click on that, there's a column on the right-hand side that's got a list of our procurements. And if you select track and systems, that industry day event information is posted there. So you'll see a PowerPoint presentation, which has a very similar slide to what we showed earlier of indicative timing of upcoming rail procurements, as well as information, like I said earlier, presented on Bruce's portion of the slide with the indicative timing of upcoming rail contracts. The other way to also get notifications is to register at Connect HSR for any updates. So when the authority and communications team sends out e-blasts, you'll be on those lists for information and updates regarding any upcoming events for these upcoming rail procurements.
Great. David, if you could flip to slide 3 just really briefly so we get that QR code up there for folks. That's the Industry Awareness Day link. We have really long URLs, so hopefully this link is easier for folks to just snap a shot of that QR code. So that takes you to the Industry Awareness Day that has, again, information on all of the various procurements happening. Okay, we have another question. NTP1, Notice to Proceed 1, is 5 years, 2 months duration, commencing May 1st, 2024. How does that fit into the overall schedule for operational running of the 119-mile section? First, let's confirm that that date is accurate with our new schedule for this procurement, right? Rachel, is that NTP1 anticipated date for this procurement? What is that new date?
The new date for that will be anticipated as end of June, following the June board meeting.
Okay, and then how does that fit into the overall schedule that the authority has for operational running of the 119? That's probably a Ryan and Bruce question.
I'll start, Ryan, and then you can jump in with anything I may have left out. That NTP is, of course, as soon as we can get the designer on board. And as I mentioned, the concurrency of contracts is also important. Once the design and construction is completed, and we expect the designer to be active throughout the construction process, and then after that design and construction is completed, we'll have a phase static and dynamic testing. As certain pieces are ready for static testing, we'll static test those, and then we'll dynamic test certain portions, and hopefully culminating in a section that we can begin trial running on for the 171, and then a smaller section that we would do dynamic testing on the 119. All of that hope ending in us getting revenue service certification between 2030 and 2033. Brian, you want to add any detail?
To be honest, I was just going to what you said there, Bruce. Is the key is the operational running is on the 171 miles,
right?
And this timeline is to get us to the testing of the 119, and then the extensions to Merced and Bakersfield to achieve that operational running in the 2030 to 2033 window, like you said.
Okay, great. I'm going to go a little bit out of order because I want to make sure that I hit all the small business questions. Those are a priority here, I think, for us. So we've got one question. It says, a notice on the webinar said it would provide additional approaches to information on teaming beyond what the previous webinar provided. For small businesses, is the list of attendees at this webinar the only additional resource that will be provided?
Thank you, Kate. Yes, so the Small Business Program will be hosting a networking and teaming event in May to allow small businesses to connect with potential primes to build their team to bid on this contract. So that is upcoming, and that will be a resource that we will be providing, and more information will be shared when we finalize that information.
Great, and that information will be on the procurement website, which is, again, that's on slide 28, if we wanted to go back to that slide. Okay, another small business question, Chardonnay. Under the new small business program, if a subconsultant has certifications as a DVBE, a DBE, and an SBE, will that subconsultant qualify? You might want to mute, Chardonnay, until I'm done, sorry. Or Ryan, if you might want to mute as well. will that subconsultant qualify to each of the 3 goals? Or does that small business have to decide which goal they're going to apply their status to, you know, DVBE, DBE, or SBE? That's a great question.
That is a great question. And yes, you would have to identify as one of those small business certifications for the contract. We only recognize one, and the prime and the sub will need to decide which certification will be best to meet the goal based off of their needs for the small business goals.
Great. Okay, wonderful. Another small business question. What will happen if prime firms are not on track to meet their small business goals and project milestones?
That is a great question. So if we identify that a prime is not on track, we will meet with them. And if we have an issue, we'll meet with the primes to discuss their barriers and obstacles that they're facing. And if so, we'll also escalate that to include leadership from both the prime and from the authority to discuss, how we can achieve and get them back on track to meet their small business goals.
Okay. And then another one, you answered this in part, but if there's anything else you wanted to add, it's how do I connect with a prime? If I'm a small business, who are the primes? And Rachel might be able to offer information on that too. I'm not sure which one of you wants to take that.
I can go ahead and take that. So yes, a list of the registrants that are self-identified as primes from the November 15th, 2023 pre-bid meeting is available on the Design for Track and OCS website. You can refer to the slides that were presented or with that QR code that was shared earlier. Additionally, we have online our major contractor payment report. This lists all the prime contractors that are currently being paid. And as a small business program, we also host Meet the Primes. So every quarter we do a session with the Meet the Primes to introduce the primes to small businesses so that they would have the opportunity to connect that way.
And following this Q&A session too, we will also be posting a list of the registrants. And as you all know, when you registered, you have to self-identify yourself as a prime or a sub or a small business. So that list will also be available for additional ways to connect to primes.
And David, if you could go to slide 4, I think to have that just the procurement QR code up, that would be really helpful. Yeah, this also has the email there for questions if we don't get to your question. So another question, we've got a conflicts question. Could we confirm that there is a conflict of interest between this designer and the CMGC contractor only if the offeror is selected and awarded? Potentially, is it possible for a bidder to bid on both for the 2 RFQs? Generally, the answer is yes, because typically that conflict doesn't arise until you're selected. But I would really encourage the individual with this question to submit something to legal@hsr.ca.gov if you have a specific concern, because we still need to look at each case individually and all the facts that are surrounding it. Okay, so the next question we've got are the Package 1B, Track and OCS, CMGC, and Package 2 systems, progressive design build procurements planned to be relatively concurrent?
And the answer is yes. And that's going to require us here at the authority to manage the access to the track and trackway and track access on a longitudinal job like this, where you have multiple contractors vying for the same space, is critical. And the information that's used to make the track access decisions are progress schedule, materials on hand, and which activity is most critical for us to reach our schedule objectives. So as we move through the construction management of the Track 1B and Package 2, we'll have to have an entity that makes decisions about who gets access to certain areas of the track in a way that's most efficient in order for us to meet our goals. Usually I've seen it end up as a dispatcher that kind of sits in a trailer. He goes with the 3-week look ahead, he meets with the contractors, and then collaboratively they make decisions about who has access to the work. If there's switch machines on site and someone else needs to be in that area, let's say erecting cat poles, then there's a decision that's made based on material on hand and getting that work done most efficiently. And usually one entity can help to make that decision in the best way that minimizes the risk to the authority for schedule delays.
And it's possible that that question may also be curious about the procurement timing themselves. So I think right now the CMGC procurement is slotted for late Q3, mid to late Q3 of this year. And then the systems would be, or Q2, I'm sorry, the CMGC is slotted for later in Q2. The systems, the progressive design build contract, we're anticipating releasing that procurement in Q3 of 2024. So they will be relatively, the timing will be relatively the same, but slightly staggered depending on, you know, a lot of that has to do with just the ability to manage, to administer those procurements. And there's another technical question here, probably for Ryan. Will the full suite of data be available indoors with the civil works at NTP in order that a baseline for the track design can be developed?
So the easy answer is no. So obviously some of the civil works is still under construction. So some of the information will be as built. Some will be for design, for construction still at that stage. And one of the important early tasks of this track design contract is to get that baseline, whether that be from the information that we provide or additional survey, LiDAR, etc. So we're very aware that, you know, on day one, we won't have everything, and we'll have a detailed schedule that shows when all those gaps are filled in.
Okay, one more scope question for you, Ryan. Regarding the scope, it seems that there is some overlap with the civil contracts. The scope talks about fencing and drainage, for example, that are also part of the civil contracts. How do you anticipate that these overlaps will be handled?
So I think a bit like that, the previous answer, there's the scope that the civil contracts are delivering, which is quite broad. So for example, fence the entire right of way. And then there will be the subtleties of some of the system sites which need additional fencing around particular equipment, or some access points that need to be dealt with in a slightly different way. So it's relatively minor civil work, I think we would say in general. But the scope is there because there are going to be elements of those that have to either be modified or changed or added to. So it's not a complete fence, the 171 miles. It'll be very discrete places, particularly where we have system sites.
Okay, great. And then Chardonnay, back to you for some more small business questions. I guess generally, which certifications do we consider for our small business program goals? We did get a very specific question in the chat, a good question about, you know, because we're getting federal funding, will any of the federal certs for veteran-owned businesses be considered SDVOSB, NAVOBA, or Disability IN, etc.? Which certifications do we accept, I would say, for our small business goals?
Yeah. So for our small business goals, the only certification types that we accept is the Disabled Veteran Business Enterprise, the DVBE, the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, which is the federal certification, and the small business, public works, and micro business, which are all state certifications.
Okay, great. I believe that is the end of all the questions that I'm seeing in the Q&A. Is there anything else that Bruce or Rachel, you wanted to address? I know that questions on this are to be submitted at that email on your screen by February 9th. If you have teaming questions or conflict questions, please go ahead and submit those and we'll help you as soon as we can. We know time is of the essence, so we're ready to help you all.
Right, and I'd just like to add that please, please, please submit your questions as you go through the documents and you have questions. Again, that deadline is February 9th. So we'd like to get all your questions and try and get them answered as expediently as possible so that we can get the maximum amount of participation in this procurement. And I really want to thank you all for your time and attention today. It's hopefully it was helpful for you. It was good for us to hear your questions, and that will, shape our thinking as we move forward. So I really do appreciate you all taking the time to be a part of this. And Rachel, any closing comments?
That's it, Bruce. Sums it up.
All right. Well, again, thank you for your attention, and this concludes our Q&A session. The question email is on the trackdesign@hsr.ca.gov. Again, trackdesign@hsr.ca.gov, and they are due on Friday, February 9th. And thank you all for your participation.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.